Hello and welcome to Zestology. It's the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. And I'm Tony Wrighton, walking along the Thames on a very chilly spring day at the moment. You might have noticed that I've been a little bit quiet recently. I mean, not quiet on the podcast. The podcast has still been coming out every Monday. But quiet because I send my 3 Zesty Things newsletter out every Monday as well. And I haven't sent it for a couple of months. And I've got a good excuse for that. And that is because I'm sure you know, if you're a regular listener to Zestology, that we've been waiting for our baby to arrive, me and my partner Faith. And he did. And so, it wasn't a conscious decision to stop sending it, but there's no way I had time to send it for the first couple of months anyway. Amazing how it takes up every minute of the day having a baby. It's been a brilliant time. It's an absolute roller coaster. The highs of having a family and a new family member and a human to look after, and the lows, the sheer terror of having to look after a new human and being covered in punami at 3 o'clock in the morning. The highs and lows, I wouldn't change it for the world. And it might be a bit of a cliche to say the word blessed, but we certainly are. So that's why the 3 Zesty Things newsletter hasn't been going out, but I've done all right with the podcast and it is still going, and it's nice to be able to tell you that the baby that I'd obviously talked about on the podcast a few times has finally arrived, and we're really excited about it. There's a lot of gubbins that you have to get when you have a baby. When my partner Faith first got pregnant, we kind of said, it'd be great not to buy too much stuff, and anything we do buy, it'd be great to have second hand. But it turns out you just have to have some stuff. By law, you have to have a car seat that works and that is new and has never been in a crash before and all the rest of it to take a baby anywhere. You have to have a pram that meets certain requirements. You have to get all sorts of clothes for them and various things. As much as possible, we've gone second hand, but there's some things we've just had to do new. And one of the things that I've been putting together over the last month or so, in snatched intervals. Oh, it's very windy. Hope the podcast recording is all right. In snatched intervals, when the baby's not crying, I've been writing a blog post because, as much as possible, I wanted to buy products that were kind of natural, organic, and would help the baby be kind of healthy and happy in a natural way. Turns out a lot of the products on sale aren't exactly ideal in terms of the chemicals that a car seat might have been treated in, the toxins and so on. And really, as much as possible, we wanted our baby to have a safe, non-toxic home environment, cutting EMFs as low as possible and all the rest of it. So I've been putting all the stuff that we've bought and used for our baby, all the natural, organic stuff, into a blog post. And if you're interested, you can check it out on the website, tonywrighton.com, babies and biohacking. It's all natural, it's all organic. Some of it costs more than the normal stuff you might get, but we felt it was worth it. And if you've not got baby, you won't need to read the article, but you can if you want anyway. It's been a bit of a labour of love, really. I don't know if it will help or not, but I spent so long researching things like cribs, organic cribs and car seats that had, kind of gentle organic materials and hadn't been soaked in, I don't know, whatever chemicals they do soak some car seats in, that I thought it'd be nice to pass that on just in case you ever need it or in case you're interested. So, enough about babies for now. On to today's podcast with a repeat guest, a real friend of the show, John Gray, author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Best-selling author. He's been on Oprah. He says in this podcast, I can't remember how many times, been on Oprah, I think 16 times or something like that. And talk about the circle of life. John lost his wife a few months ago, as he talks about in the podcast. Very, very movingly, actually. I knew that he'd lost his wife, and we spoke about that beforehand, Bonnie, and he'd spoken about his wife so many times in the podcast before. The moment we start, he talks about it and he really opens up, and I'm so grateful that he was so honest about his grief. It's incredible to listen to him talk about this in the podcast. I'm very grateful to him for that. So, wow, what a year John has had. And John was over in London for some trainings and to meet some people. And one of the things I might actually call this podcast is he talked about the greatest gift that you could give a person. It was specifically that the greatest gift that a man could give. So I will let him reveal more in the podcast. But what do you think it might be? What do you think the greatest gift a person could give to someone else in a relationship is? That struck me as a great theme, a great topic for Zestology. So, thanks as always to listening to my ramblings as I walk along in London. That's what I do at the start of this podcast. And welcome once again the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and his new book, Beyond Mars and Venus, John Gray. Well, we're recording now.
Very good.
Here in the lobby of the Blakemore Hotel. We got a coffee, so we're sorted. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah.
I'm having lots of blue skies here. It's nice weather.
Yeah, don't get used to it. It doesn't last for very long. But it's good to have you here. What are you doing in London?
There's something called the Modern Mystery School, and they're around the world, little centers, and I was activated. They have a procedure called activation where I live in California. And I came here to train to learn how to activate people. Now, back, what was it, 1970, that's over 40 years ago, I was trained as a teacher of transcendental meditation. I was an initiator in that. So I've been doing this 50 years, meditating and whatever, and learning different things. So this is, just expanding my awareness of what people are doing. And I'm really, really enjoying the class. The activation process is about a 1-hour process that you feel like you just had a massively clean shower of your aura, so to speak. You just feel more spacious, more expanded, and more at peace. And
wow,
it was it helped. I was going through a lot of grieving. My wife of 33 years, Bonnie, she's in all my books. Back last year, over 8 months ago, she passed. And so your life, everything changes. So It was a nice diversion for me, a little distraction. Not that I want to be distracted too much, because the grieving process is one of reflecting and remembering. Forgiveness of yourself is a big one, and appreciation, and then gratitude and forgiveness, and waves and waves of feeling, until you can be presented with the same old situations, remembering her, without that knife in your heart. I'm still with a half knife in my heart when it comes up, but it's sweet because the reason we grieve is because we have attachment, and we have attachment because we love. And we shared such a beautiful life together, and now I'll carry her forward in my work. I couldn't have written any of my books without her help. She was there for me 100%, and her wisdom is in my books as well.
Well, I didn't know if you were going to mention it or not, but I just wanted to say I'm so sorry to hear that she passed. And obviously, I know just from how much you talked about her in the previous podcast that we recorded, just what a profound influence she was on your life, and how close you were together and how long you spent together.
One of the things she asked that I play at her funeral was from the play Wicked, a song, "Because of You, I'm better," or something like that, and I'm good. And I just look at our whole relationship, and I see how women, my wife, had the power to bring out the very, very best of me, and how much I grew in that relationship through her love. And it's unfortunate today that we don't really have the skills to keep love open and alive. It kind of is in the beginning of a relationship. For most people, it's automatic, and because there's a newness. That newness stimulates the brain chemical dopamine. It gives us a lot of pleasure, so there's a natural instinct and motivation to do things and overcome, jealousies, overcome resentments, overcome insecurities when you're with that person, and having a lot of energy to give to them. And then over time, because familiarity sets in, that produces more of the brain chemical serotonin. So we become comfortable. And that ease and comfort is a good thing. What you want to have is both the passion and the comfort. And we were able to maintain that for we were together 40 years. So
that's just the secret, isn't it? Keeping the passion but the comfort as well.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to get that balance.
Yeah, it is. I think anything has its challenges, but it's almost impossible if you don't have an understanding that we'll be talking about today. I think that the whole idea of men are from Mars, women are from Venus, remembering that we're different and understanding those differences in a new light, because the world's changed dramatically. Women have become more masculine, and men actually are experiencing lower male hormones and higher female hormones. I don't like to say men are becoming more feminine because they don't like that. Whereas when you say to women they're becoming more masculine, they kind of go, yeah, I can do it. So an example of men becoming more feminine is becoming overly emotional, overly needy, overly sensitive, anger, a lack of motivation, and a major one is playing too much. Playing games, video games, watching TV, too much sports, too much beer. Life is about playing and working hard. And it used to be, just the way culture was set up. And I'm not saying we have to turn it back. I say we have to have greater awareness on how to maintain a balance inside ourselves. But when I was growing up as a kid, I knew I had to make money, have a job, because my wife wasn't going to have that. And so you feel that huge responsibility, like you got to do it. And if you have the right support, you have the confidence to do it. And that confidence to do something increases male hormones. So what we see today is a disaster of men's male hormones going down. It's the fuel for men. And when I talk about male hormones, I'm primarily talking about testosterone. There's a few others, and often testosterone gets a bad rap because it was misunderstood. We used to associate aggression with testosterone. It turns out, now the science proves that when men are aggressive, or when they're irritable, when they're angry, when they're argumentative, when they're passive, when they're procrastinating, or when they're depressed, their testosterone levels are low. It's like the best of men comes out when their testosterone's high. And the culture today...
So the anger actually reduces your testosterone?
Anger is testosterone converting into estrogen through an enzyme called aromatase. And it happens when you're faced with a challenge as a man. Your testosterone will rise, it'll give you faster reaction time, and disconnect you from feelings. You see, you can't go into battle if you're afraid, or at least you have to minimize it. So testosterone disconnects us from our emotions temporarily if it shoots way up. But then if we don't know what to do, or if what we're doing doesn't seem to be working, then we lose confidence. As soon as we lose confidence, we're not trained, we don't know how to handle a situation, then this is biological. Testosterone converts into estrogen. It floods the brain. So yes, testosterone has a little role in aggression in that some men, generally speaking, according to your shoulder size, you have a set point of how much testosterone you need in order to feel good and to feel loving and to feel confident. So we have our basic set. So some men are born with a requirement of higher testosterone levels. And so when they lose confidence, they will produce more estrogen, which can cause them to feel more angry. Hotheads, or defensiveness, or insecurities will be greater when the testosterone converts into estrogen.
And I wonder how all this and your work and Beyond Mars and Venus and Men Are From Mars, the original book, how, with the huge change that you've gone through, you touched on it a few moments ago, over the last few months, how has it caused you to reassess your views on your work and on grief and on relationships?
First of all, I could not even comprehend how deep my grief has been for my wife. It's something I think only people who've lost a child, or maybe that's even greater, or lost a spouse after 40 years can understand. It was so deep. I've written books on grief. Over 40 years ago, I was married for a short period of time, and it was devastating to me, the divorce. And so my heart was broken, and I was out of work because I was teaching a class on relationships 40 years ago with my wife, first wife, and she fell in love with one of the participants. So I was like, my heart was broken, and also I couldn't work because I couldn't stand in front of an audience and teach. But what I did do is I began teaching another seminar called Healing the Heart. And then finally I started having a relationship again with Bonnie. And the irony, Bonnie is my wife for 40 years. I tried to marry Bonnie before my first wife, and she wouldn't marry me because she said, "You're just not ready." And she was right. I wasn't ready.
Is that right?
I had to learn certain lessons. in this first marriage, which was just a couple of years, and then do the healing process. The healing process is grieving, where things are painful. You learn how to heal the pain rather than having to run away from the pain. And then my brother committed suicide. That was a huge one. I learned how to grieve that without feeling the guilt and the shame. And whenever somebody close to you dies, you feel like, I should have, I could have, I wish I had, that kind of a thing. But if you learn how to process the emotions, and there's all 4 basic colors of emotion. There's the anger, the sadness, the fear, and the regret. It's kind of like the basic colors, red, yellow, blue, and black. There's the guilt part of it, and light shining through those. Those are the emotions that need to be explored when there's a loss. And if somebody only explores 1 or 2, they tend to be stuck for the rest of their life feeling the pain. So the brain has a cathartic effect by looking at the whole range of emotions associated with a loss. And that can be really tricky for people if they don't understand. Then my father was actually on my honeymoon with Bonnie, my wife. He was found dead in the trunk of his car. He was picked up a hitchhiker, and they robbed him and put him in the trunk, and the police didn't come for 6 hours, and as a result he died of heat asphyxiation in the trunk. So that was a big loss for me. I mean, these are like, I've had, and my younger sister died of Alzheimer's, early Alzheimer's. That was a trauma for me. So there's a lot of losses in my life, and Bonnie had a lot of losses. So we kind of went to a funeral every year in our marriage. But I really became like expert at grieving and understanding the process, wrote books on it. But this knocked me to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
It's a healing thing, and ultimately you move on and your heart grows. You can't help but grow if you fully grieve.
The grief is something that I've touched on before with a couple of other guests on this podcast, and what has been particularly interesting is that British people apparently don't tend to be very good at grief and actually connecting with the grief, because the temptation is to kind of push it away and get past the grief as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's a mistake. Because people don't know what to do with those feelings, so they just want to run away from it and not look at it. As opposed to every day, I've got pictures all around my house. I bring flowers for my wife. I burn a candle for my wife. All that. And I journal. I talk about my feelings. I read her journals. All this stuff is to reevaluate relive the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so the brain can adjust. Okay, that happened, but now it's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
That happened, it's not going to happen again. And it's really hard to do if you don't have this knowledge of how to deal with emotions. If you can't, then you have a sort of the standard thing, there'll always be a hole in my heart. Okay, well, I love my dad more now after he passed. My mother passed by an accident, carbon monoxide poisoning in her house. That was a good 6 to 10 months of grieving for me.
Yeah.
And there's no hole in my heart. There's just sweet love. It's a feeling of love, and I don't feel that pain. But I do for many, many months until I get through it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just don't want to look at it and whatever. And they might even say, "Oh, I heard your wife." I'll say my wife died, and they immediately go, "Oh, I made you feel bad." Actually, I like talking about it because talking about it just brings up whatever feelings are there.
Mm. And do you find when you're over here doing something like you are this weekend, and you're at seminars and stuff like that, and there's a certain amount of kind of being at your best? How do you deal with those emotions whilst you're kind of training other people, or you're doing an interview like this? I mean, is there some kind of different place that you have to go to whilst you're dealing with that?
I've been a teacher for how many years? Almost 50 years. Okay, no. 50 years I've been teaching. So this is like, I don't feel anxiety, I don't feel nervousness. I've done interviews, I've done the biggest shows in the world. I've done Carnegie Hall, I have a Broadway show.
You've been on Oprah, how many times
have you been on Oprah? 18 times on
18
Oprah,
times,
I was a coach. So, this is like old hat for me. So it's literally like taking a shower in the morning, or combing my hair. You just don't think about it.
Yeah.
I've written 26 books, so I just refer to my books. So basically, that's a channel of confidence where I know exactly what to do effortlessly, like driving a car. Mm-hmm. So what happens at that time is the testosterone goes up. Whenever a man or woman does something you're very confident at producing a result, testosterone goes up, estrogen goes down, and estrogen is the emotional hormone. Estrogen is the hormone of love, of pleasure, of happiness, of joy, of peacefulness. All those things come if your needs for estrogen are being fulfilled. The estrogen needs to be stimulated at those times. And that's what's happening for women today, because when they're working all day doing jobs that stimulate testosterone, it's not that they come home with high testosterone. They come home with not enough estrogen. So their mind, it's busy. If they can't go over to their female side, which is receptive, is appreciative, is grateful, is happy. It's like, oh, look at all the support I have. That's what estrogen does. Oh, I feel so happy. I'm here with you. I'm here in London. The weather's great. This is like... I can pay all my bills. This is fantastic. That's estrogen. And what we want as human beings is our natural balance of testosterone, estrogen. And those are just like scientific words that really imply something that's been taught on this planet for 6,000 years, is there's masculine and feminine. There's yin and there's yang. And if you have a male body, your balance of yang energy needs to be higher than your yin energy. And everybody's got their own unique balance, you know. I mean, some guys are like, way over on the masculine side. Some guys are more towards the middle, like me, which made it easier for me to kind of understand shifting from male to the female side.
Right.
I grew up in the 60s, and I still remember it. You know, I had older brothers who were already kind of grown, and you know, they had crew cuts, and they're going in the army and that kind of stuff. And I'm like the generation, the Beatles came out, and you know, I got boots and beads and long hair and pink shirts and demonstrate for peace. Learn meditation. That was all my stuff. That's my female side. See, I was going to my female side. And that wasn't the destructive female side. That was me moving from masculine, a whole childhood of being masculine, over to the female. So when you move from one side to the other, in the midpoint, you get ecstasy. So the women were basically, back in those days, they're all like not putting up incense. They're in their circles, empowerment circles. We're going to run the world. We're going to save the world. We're going to fix this. We're going to change this. They're on their male side. And as you're coming from female into male, if you're a woman, there's ecstasy in the middle. But then when you go way over there, there's none. And that's what's happened to date for many people. Yeah. Not everybody, but when you're unhappy, if you're a woman and you're stressed and you're unhappy, one of the symptoms of hormonal imbalance, yin-yang imbalance, is feeling overwhelmed. Then, of course, it goes to resentment, it goes to exhaustion, it goes to dissatisfaction. And, you know, you can always blame the outer world for that. But the reality is, I had women coming to me. I had a counseling practice for 10 years, a good 8 hours a day listening to women. And they would come in resentful, overwhelmed, unhappy, you know, problems in their life. And I would get them to talk, and I'd ask questions, and I'd feel what they feel. I'd give them empathy and support without even solving any problems in their life. And they would leave happy. Nothing changed in their life, but suddenly they're feeling good. That's what we have to get, is that all of our experience of the world, good, bad, whatever, it's the thing that causes us to experience it is the guy who's experiencing it. You know, what's going on inside of me? And we all know we have good days, we have bad days. That's about us inside. But the outer world can certainly trigger us to go out of balance. But our power as human beings is self-reflection in our ability to adjust what our thinking is, our expectations are, our wants and needs. And we have then the power to come back into balance and to maintain that inner balance.
And how can you do that really quickly?
Well, really quickly, there's so many modalities, but all the modalities in this perspective I'm giving forth now will help women come back to their female side, because the tendency for women is to be over on their male side. So what will bring them back to their female side? In short, anything that makes you feel happy, relaxed, fun, connecting with other women, or being on a romantic date, depending on someone for your happiness. That's a big controversial statement.
It is, yeah.
But that's what estrogen is. Estrogen is where you need other people. If you don't need anybody, you're testosterone. So what does a man need to do? If he's stressed out, stop talking is the most important thing. Because if you talk about upset feelings, that's called complaining or emoting or whatever. If you do that when you're out of balance, when you're stressed and you talk, if you're a man, then what will happen is you become more stressed. You become more angry, you become more defensive, you become more argumentative, you become more estrogen, because that's why the women in my office felt so good. As I get them to talk about their feelings, estrogen goes up and they come back into balance.
I mean, gender politics is such a kind of hot topic at the moment, and kind of, you know, traditionalized or kind of conventional views of gender. But I suppose it's actually something it's not necessarily a topic that is controversial now and wasn't before, because I know when you brought out Men Are From Mars, and I only found this out today when I was on the tube on the way here. I didn't know this before, but you went on Oprah, didn't you? You went on a few TV shows, and sales were going all right, but not amazing. And then you went on Phil Donahue's show.
Yeah,
and
Phil
they tried
saved
to
me.
stitch you up, but it didn't work.
It didn't work. It backfired.
So what happened?
It's a great show. Okay, so, well, first of all, I'm supposed to go on the Phil Donahue show, which is a 1-hour show and that big talk show. And it was more popular than Oprah at the time. He was the guy.
Phil Donahue.
Phil Donahue, wonderful man. And he's a man, so I felt safe. I understood. Men understand men. But he also had all these women. And the whole room was women. They brought in all these therapists who are anti-me, calling me a sexist. And so I'm about to go out there.
Which year is this?
1992.
And they're calling you sexist because you've written Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yeah. Actually, 1993.
Yeah.
And January 1993. The book had already been out 7 months.
Yeah.
Then I went on that show, and right about to go out, then it was the first attack on the World Trade Center. Most people don't realize that, but many years before, they had put a bomb at the bottom of it. So it was our first terrorist attack in America. Was the day I became national. And so they said the show's canceled. I said, Phil, you can't. I got a busy schedule. I got to do it. He said, no, you don't want this audience. You know, they're gonna be exposed to terrorism. You know, and I don't have an audience for you. I said, just use the same one. He said, these are really angry women, upset women. This is upset. You don't want that audience. I said, I want any audience. Says, let me do it. You know, so I went out there. It was so against me. Everybody was against me. And Phil, the great thing about him, he's always the great communicator, the balancer. So he would start defending me. And also, and I just sat there. I answered my questions very nicely. And I was prepared for this sort of stuff. I've been doing it 10 years, having people oppose me.
Yeah.
And you have to get... People only oppose you because they don't understand what you're saying. They immediately project onto me that I'm saying, you're not okay the way you are. You should go back to the way things used to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not that at all, but I'm for understanding where we are. And you had that great quote from my book. What was that one? It was really great.
I highlighted that before. Gender freedom shouldn't mean gender blindness.
Such a great phrase. I just love it. You know, in order to have freedom to be ourselves, we act like gender doesn't exist. But biology is real.
And so that was the theme of what you were saying on the show, was it? On the Phil Donahue show?
I didn't have the hormonal information then.
Yeah.
You know, I was basically... In those days, I was talking more to my more traditional audience.
Yeah.
Men Are From Mars is really great for people that aren't totally gender fluid. Even still, once you have children, it becomes more traditional regardless because you're more dependent on each other. Mm-hmm. See, when women are independent, it's different hormonal balance when they're more independent. But when women have a baby, they need help. As soon as women need help, then suddenly these dynamics of their female side come up. And they're not prepared for it because most of their life they've been very sort of high achievers and independent and whatever. How do you deal with feeling vulnerable? And how do you deal with your trust issues? How do you find your happiness without depending on someone, but also depending on them? So it's a hard thing. Yeah. You never depend on someone for everything. But when you depend on someone and they let you down, which is always going to happen, you have to learn to be forgiving, you have to be accepting, you have to be non-judgmental. And what I found is whenever people are in hormonal imbalance, cortisol is being produced, that's a stress hormone, and it makes your mind hypercritical. So you become like hyper this, oh, he didn't do this, oh, he didn't do that, well, he has to do this. And your mind will loop on these moments of dissatisfaction, and this just ruins relationships. And if you understand, coming back to what you said, it's not a simple solution, but it's a simple way to describe. It's your North Star. Women need to come back to their feminine. What are things that support their feminine? Men need to come back to their masculine. Like with Bonnie, after about 23 years, I asked her to rate our marriage, and she said, John, you know, you're a perfect father, A+, all that. Yeah. But as a husband, you're not perfect, but you've given me the greatest gift any woman could want. So I'm like, okay, redemption, what is that? And she said, I know for over 23 years, when we start to have an argument, or I say something that upset you or do something that upsets you, you will always stop talking, go to your cave, do some magic, and you always come back with more love. And that's how I teach men how to do that. The bottom line of that is you have to not talk when you're upset. You're suddenly arguing, men, stop talking. And what's funny is I teach men in my men-owned classes, and they say, yeah, but I walk away. She follows me and she asks me questions. She stays at it. And I say, one guy, I said to him, I said, why don't you just say to her, I need to use the restroom. He says, I have. They'll follow me in, you know. Because the women, they feel better when they talk. So if she expresses her feelings, and she's going to feel better, so she assumes he'll find more love if he talks, and he'll go further out of balance. Now, I know there's some men listening, gender-fluid men, and they go, but I want to talk. And usually when I talk to their wives, they go, he talks so much, it's such a turnoff. I can't believe it. He's so much about him. Men have to learn to not first of all, not to overtalk their partners. And many men will say, yeah, but she doesn't talk. I try to create connection. That's why she doesn't talk, is you overtalk. You need to ask questions. You need to be present, ask more questions, show interest. Because as women express themselves, that's what brings you back to your female side, if it's sharing about yourself. Whereas women will ask men questions because they want him to ask her questions, but men just start answering the questions and talking the whole time like they're being interviewed.
That's hilarious, because when me and my partner argue, which thankfully isn't that often, we get on really well, but when we do that. We just kind of go off into separate rooms, and because there's just no point in that moment. And it's not like a kind of strategy, it's just what happens.
That's right.
And then when we come back, hour or two later, it's whatever it was we were arguing about, the washing up or something, doesn't seem important anyway.
It's not important.
Yeah.
I got so many stories of that too. But even my inspiration for writing Men Are From Mars, I was teaching gender differences around that time, but still I was beaten down so much by the controversy of it and the misunderstanding of it. And people were demonstrating against me, that kind of stuff.
So the Phil Donahue show, you went on that, and then the next day or the next week you sold like 25,000 more copies.
Well, my publisher printed 25,000 and said at Valentine's Day we're going to put them out in the stores, and the show was going to air on Valentine's Day. The show canceled, but the book sold out. Next month, same thing happened. We're going to play your show on this date. A month later, they printed up another 25,000 for the show, and it sold out, and the show didn't air. It wasn't until the third date that the show aired. So I'd sold 75,000 copies, and it went on the list at that time.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And then the Phil Donahue show, because I remember growing up, even though I hadn't read the book, people used to, it became like a catchphrase, didn't it? You know, anytime like something was really different between men and women, you'd be like, well, men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
It did.
So it became kind of part of the kind of cultural lexicon, didn't it?
It did. People say, how did you come up with that? And it was a common question. I was giving a talk back in the early 80s, and I'd just seen the movie E.T., so I was trying to explain to women, and I really wanted to find some playful way to describe this so people don't take it so seriously and be light about it. And I said, just women, imagine your husband's E.T. You wouldn't presume to know what he needs to eat. You'd find out what they eat on his planet. Because he was eating, candy, and many mothers will say, don't give your child candy. So I couldn't even finish the point. As soon as I said, imagine your husband's E.T., all the women in the audience just laughed. They thought it was really funny. And then some woman who sounded drunk, she goes, well, where's my husband from? And I just said, Mars. And they laughed and laughed and laughed. I said, okay, that's it. Thank you for the answer. But I prayed for a good title for 3 years. I needed to, it wasn't for the good title for the book, just for my seminars,
It's amazing. You've got such a good title there. Everything else. In publishing, it's almost, the book is really important, but if you can't capture people's imagination in the first place, you're not going to get anywhere. So in that, with the seminars and the books, for your whole life's work was defined by that title, really, wasn't it?
It really has been, yeah. I do a lot of other things. I teach parenting, I teach grieving, I teach meditation, I teach spiritual growth, I do all that stuff.
And your book's on lifestyle and diet, which I've really enjoyed as well, and supplements.
I'm really into the health part of it, the supplements part of it. I have all these supplements I recommend, but I can't hear because your customs won't let them in.
I know.
It's
annoying, that, isn't it?
One of the very best to balance hormones is lithium orotate. And psychiatrists give lithium as a drug, but
do you take that every day?
I always take lithium every day.
Lithium orotate?
But not lithium carbonate, lithium orotate. Lithium orotate is simply the mineral lithium. Like I take it with calcium orotate, potassium orotate, zinc orotate. And these are alkalizing minerals for the brain. And anybody whose brain loops, immediately, if you get the right amount of lithium in your brain, which is non-toxic. See, the kind doctors give is toxic doses, 500 times the dose. So this is like microdosing lithium. And if you do lithium orotate helps you cross the blood-brain barrier, so you don't need this toxic stuff they give to people. And they just won't let it in this country, People, I sold, my website sells it, and there's like $9 for a 3-month supply.
Yeah.
Who's going to buy it? Who's going to sell that? Nobody promotes it because there's no profit in it. It's dirt cheap. It's the cheapest supplement there is.
But you can't sell lithium orotate over here.
No, I can't get it into the country.
Oh, you can't get it in?
I think you might be able to get it out of Germany because there was a German doctor who figured it out. But you just take 4.
And what is it good for?
Well, what it does is it regulates dopamine, serotonin production in the brain. And that's controversial. This is my research with researchers, but, they don't know. All they know is that when people have extreme cases of depression or extreme cases of anxiety or bipolar, extreme cases of mood fluctuations, give them lithium and it doesn't fluctuate. You have stability.
So it kind of regulates the
balance. It regulates the balance of dopamine and serotonin.
Yeah.
So what happens is they tried it out. There's spas around the world which where the water naturally has lithium in it. And they found that people go there, they get better. The depression goes away, at least for a while. Their anxiety goes away, they sleep better, they're happier. And so then they found out it was the lithium. So then you got to get the lithium into your brain. So what they do is they take lithium, they just dig it out of the ground, lithium carbonate, but it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. You need a delivery system to get it across the blood-brain barrier. And so Dr. Nieper from Germany discovered that if you bind it to uric acid, a substance in mother's milk, that it will cross the blood-brain barrier. So you only need to give healthy doses. What they give people is maybe 500 times the healthy dose, which then causes thyroid problems, weight problems, and numbs you out because your thyroid goes low.
So that's too much.
Yeah, well, anything. See, these people go, oh, it's dangerous. No, anything is dangerous if you take 100 times the dose of it. Everything good too much is not good.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Wanted to go back to what you were saying. I thought that'd be kind of quite a nice theme for the podcast when you said it's the greatest gift a person, or your wife said it was the greatest gift you could give a woman. Can you just go over that bit again, because I think it's really good for people.
It's so profound. It's so profound. The greatest gift a man can provide for a woman is safety, because she knows there's nothing she can do that's going to push me out of her life. Because deep inside of women, the primitive primal fear, which also runs the sex drive, by the way, is feeling I won't be abandoned, because that's what would happen. Your husband dies, you're all by yourself, or your husband gets mad at you and you don't have a life anymore because they couldn't get remarried, or they'd be out and, they're pregnant most of the time, so they need someone protecting them. So that was so important that they don't put off a man. And the freedom women want today to express their feelings, very important for them to stay passionate, but they should feel safe to express their feelings. So they're not going to do it right all the time. And there are better ways to do it, by the way, as opposed to just say whatever you think and feel. That's some people, I'm going to say what I'm going to think and feel. Oh, well, I certainly can't do that. Why should you be able to do that? You can't just go do that. You have to learn to speak in ways considering the other person. But at the same time, you don't have to fully suppress yourself. And to a certain extent, women did have to suppress themselves historically, because if they give the message to a man that he's not enough, men would lose confidence, they become angry, and they become violent. So it was like women's life is at stake when a man is angry.
Right, so it's almost like a form of abandonment. Or it's non-safe.
It really is. See, when women get angry, you may not have sex. But when men get angry, you could die. To the primitive brain, brain. This just, reactions
primal,
inside of it. They're irrational, but they're there. So what happens is when a man is angry, he needs to discipline himself at those times to always stop talking and not take action and not make decisions, but to cool off. And cooling off cannot happen in the presence of a woman. Why? Or anybody that you love deeply, feminine. Because the only way you can cool off is for your estrogen to go back down and your testosterone to go back up. So that's where you go out and you do something you're good at. You could do math problems if you're a math expert. You could meditate if you're a meditation expert. You could go lift weights if you're good at that and you feel confident in that. You can drive your car if you're good at that. So things you're good at, sports, you do go and do it. It's both watch it and do it.
And that will help bring you back into balance.
That will bring you back into balance. Then what you do, and your mental state at those times, is you set the intention, I'm going to temporarily forget it. You know how men will say to each other, forget it. We say it to women all the time, it doesn't work, because their brains are different. For us, we need to temporarily forget it, focus on something else. It's like right now.
And then come back to it when you're...
And then once you're feeling good, your heart's open. You love this woman, your heart's open. Then you reflect with empathy and compassion on what just happened. You go, oh, I shouldn't have said this, I should have said that. And when you go back, don't go back to the same conversation. You're not ready for that yet. Go back and be more loving. And so she feels, because she notices you're angry. Yeah. They feel the disconnection. And even when you pull away, there is a disconnection. Yeah. And that freaks out women, okay? Because they live, estrogen depends on connection. That's why it's so hard on them. And that's safety. Yeah. Connection is safety. And anger is threatening. Now, if a woman's angry, men generally aren't that threatened, but most men today, because they're on their female side, will react back with anger. Because when you're having sex with someone, you tend to mirror their emotions. If you're angry at me, I get angry back. A stranger gets angry at me, I go, forget that person.
Yeah.
But so we're more connected, we tend to mirror back. So when a woman is upset, often the man who's not trained and disciplined in what I teach, he just gets angry back. If she has 3 complaints, he has 3 complaints. He'll back and forth. It just ruins relationships.
Yeah.
So, my wife would sometimes have complaints, and she'd try to keep them down, but she would sometimes have complaints. And I would practice, don't speak. Because if I can get her through and get her to talk about things, and here's the 3 magic phrases: help me understand that better, I hear you, what else, and tell me more. That was 4. And when you use those phrases, she talks more, her estrogen levels will go up, and then you just go on. Basically, you finish it, I hear you. Men kind of go, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to do something? You don't do anything. You hear, and you go forth with I hear you and give a hug. And that's one technique. There's so many. And it's not that you just ignore what she said, but quite often women are just needing to talk about things before their heart opens. But what if a man pulls away and she needs to talk? That's where she needs to have a life separate from the man. Your life can't totally depend on a man. You got friends, you got a relationship with the divine, you've got your own journal. You have to vent these feelings. You have to talk about them for a while. Because talking about feelings, if you feel heard, then your estrogen will go back up, and suddenly life looks better. It's like the clouds part and the sun shines.
The estrogen thing is really interesting, actually, because I know you know that we just had our first son 3 weeks ago.
Yes, I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah,
You're
we are
glowing.
too. Yeah,
Well,
that's good. Not a massive amount of sleep last night.
That's right.
He seems to really like sleeping in the middle of the day. But it's quite interesting because something I've read, and I think I've read it more than once, is that during pregnancy and when the baby is first born, a man's testosterone levels go down because he is so consumed by this need to protect and defend. So it's kind of the hunter part goes away a little bit, and you kind of feel very protective. And I do, I feel very protective of my partner, Faith, but also my son as well now.
Well, the protective part is not just testosterone going down. It's actually, I've got a job to do. Keeps your testosterone up, but all that other part is your estrogen goes so high because now you have your heart opens. And your heart opens, it's the sweetest thing. And then all that estrogen, that starts lowering the testosterone. So they've got statistics that when men get married, their testosterone levels take a drop. This is average. Mine are 50% higher than when I was a young man. Okay, so there's a way to keep your testosterone up. But your typical married man, because he loves his partner, his estrogen will be higher, and that will lower his testosterone. Then then when you have children, it takes another knockdown. And this is all measurable in these big statistical stories. But it doesn't mean that has to be the case. Your testosterone levels can get higher as you get older. It's a norm for it to go lower because people aren't aware of how they have sex. Their sex practices are not supportive of estrogen production in women and testosterone production in men. It's old-fashioned sex. It just goes down. That's one thing. And 2 is communication skills in the relationship. If men need to feel that they are successful in a marriage, so too many complaints just knocks a man's testosterone down. Not enough sex knocks a man's testosterone down. Not enough sex where the woman is happy and fulfilled. Okay, that's the key to it. Not just sex. Sex, it's a woman's happiness and fulfillment that gives meaning to a man's life. And if he's married and he loves his wife, okay, there could be other things for guys who don't have wives, all right? So I don't want to be so limiting. And for women, their whole hormonal balance has more, not so much to do with a man, it has more to do with her own choices she makes in her life. The most significant days for women and a man are 5 days after her period for 5 days. That's when her need for estrogen stimulation, which means where she feels I can trust and depend on someone, needs to double. If it doubles during that time, there's a sense of fulfillment that will carry her through the whole month. If she doesn't get it then, there's a sense of dissatisfaction with her partner that will carry in her life throughout the whole month. So 5 days after her period is where the biology sets up to make a baby, ovulate. And during those 5 days, she needs the right stimulation in order to knock her estrogen up to where she could have a baby. And that high estrogen level, if it's not met, she feels like, gee, I'm missing something.
Right.
And even more disastrous is if she feels I'm missing estrogen stimulation, which means I can depend on you for something. I can go to you, I can talk to you, I can get your support, I know you got my back, you'll take me on a date, you're romantic. Romance is a huge estrogen stimulator. And during those 5 days is when it has the biggest bang for the buck. Do it after your ovulation, it doesn't have a big bang for the buck. So save your money for those 5 days.
Okay.
Or your time and
taking
attention.
notes here. This is good.
But see, after ovulation, estrogen needs to be there, but progesterone has to be higher. Otherwise,
Yeah.
she gets something called estrogen dominance. So then her estrogen actually makes her feel worse. So looking to a man to make you happy after ovulation will actually make you feel worse, no matter what he does. You've got to have more self-sufficiency during that time. Progesterone is produced when you're doing social bonding. Social bonding are nurturing to yourself, not depending on your partner. But during those 5 days, you always have to have some dependence. Otherwise, you're solo, and that just doesn't make estrogen. And so,
I think we're almost ready.
By
to
the way,
finish.
I know that was a lot of hormonal.
No, that was good.
That was a lot,
Yeah.
and people didn't follow it. That is like chapters of my most recent book, Beyond Mars and Venus.
Yes,
So that is
yeah.
there,
which I
as
have a
reference.
signed copy of, which you gave me last time, which I was having a little look through before I came to meet you.
That's where you got that great quote. I like that one.
It's a great quote. Yeah. Okay, we've got 5 minutes more. It's very hot, isn't it, where you're sitting?
I'm cool.
Are you okay?
I'm cool.
Okay,
yeah, I
good.
like the sunshine.
So I've taken some notes there for fatherhood, for keeping the testosterone levels in the right level.
I'll say something about fatherhood.
Yeah,
Okay, two
I'd love you
things
to.
there. First of all, when you've been to this stage, when your wife's pregnant, I said to my wife, not that everybody has to do this, but I said, honey, for the next 9 months and then 9 months after that, I'm your personal slave. But then we have to come back to this equal sharing relationship. But you need more help at this time, and so I'm going to be there. But then there'll be a time where you don't need so much help. But so don't expect everything I do now to happen forever. Okay, so I said that. Then what happened? So I really put forth this effort of just giving more. And I had this experience which was opened my awareness to the kind of love that men really need. Because I would be in there washing the dishes, and she would sit and watch me. And she had such appreciation for me washing the dishes. Because there was this message that came through, you're such an amazing man because you don't have to do that, and you're doing it anyway. And I know there's a few women go, well, he should be doing it. Well, in my case, I'll give you an example. I made a deal with my wife before I married her. I said, honey, I'm like the most generous guy, giving. I'll do anything you want. I just don't do dishes. Okay? I got some issue about it. Maybe when I'm enlightened one day, I'll do dishes. I didn't see my fathers doing it. As a kid, I did them for the whole family of 7 kids. I don't want to ever do dishes again. And I'll hire somebody. We'll do whatever it is. You don't have to do them if you don't. She said, no. I'm happy to do dishes. So she would do the dishes. And then during pregnancy, I said, during the pregnancy and for 9 months, I will do all the dishes. And so she gave me this kind of love, which is, it's amazing. He's doing that for me, and he doesn't have to do that. That is the most empowering love. That's where when your partner does something for you as a woman, you go, oh, that was so kind of you, or oh, that was so helpful. Thank you so much. It's that sweetness that couples have when they're dating.
Yeah.
Right? Without all the expectations and requirements.
It's pure love when you're doing something just because you want to do it for them.
But it's also pure love for the person who's not requiring you to do it because I did something for you yesterday.
Yes.
That's the dance. And so another example of that was 7 years in my marriage. I was opening the door for a restaurant. We were leaving a restaurant. It was a date, so I was opening the door. And some big, tall, handsome guy opened the other door. And so she's walking through 2 doors. And she's like beams. And she looks at the stranger and she says, oh, thank you. And the tone of voice said, oh, thank you. You didn't have to do that. And you did it. What a gentleman. Now my husband, he better open the door because I do his laundry. So that's called taking your partner for granted. We forget to appreciate the little things, and then we forget to do the little things. And that's what men don't realize, is those little things you did in the beginning is what romance can open their heart. Lots of little things as opposed to one big thing, paycheck, whatever. And the flip side of that is women forget, just as much as men forget to do the little stuff, they stop appreciating the little stuff.
Yeah.
And there's some women say, well, why should I have to appreciate things? Why should I? That's your male side. Come back to your female side, which is basically says, isn't it great I don't have to do everything myself? I can do everything. That's the modern woman. I can do everything. But isn't it great I don't have to do everything?
And certainly with parenthood, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed so far, and obviously it's such early days, is the pure selflessness, not only of looking after our son, but, when I've had a particularly rough night, for example, Faith is the first person to say, you just have a 3-hour rest, even though she's knackered as well, the kind of just looking after each other for the sake of it is really lovely and a completely different level to what it was before.
This is where it can change your life. I remember my children, which was, I could feel pain in my heart. It was like opening up. It was breaking open. And what it is, you hit the nail on it, is selflessness. Selflessness stimulates testosterone. It makes you a man. That's like a lot of men just don't grow up till they have kids, just because you're feeling really responsible for somebody else. Because when you're just thinking about yourself, you don't grow as a man. It's the selflessness that knocks your testosterone up. And at my age, it's totally serving the world. As you serve your family, you got to expand out. I serve my students, whatever, then you serve the world. The bigger you're selfless for others. And it doesn't mean you have to not be happy and do things for yourself. It's all in balance. That's the key to it. But today, addictions is just taking over for men. And what we need, particularly with more women in the workplace, more women being independent, fathers raising sons, they don't get the example of seeing a woman depending on a man. So it's really important for fathers to show up more and present to their sons and their daughters that they're there for them. And there's got to be a counterbalance. They got to get that presence. And a lot of men don't realize their power as a father is stability, cool, calm, and collected. There's problems. You don't get upset about it. You go, okay, this is how we're going to handle it. Every problem becomes a challenge and an adventure. And that's a real gift to the kids. Mothers often teach us how to worry about things to prevent them from happening. And fathers teach their children, hey, if it happens, no big deal. We'll fix it. We'll solve it. We can do this. And that is a big power that men would give. And particularly when children are not seeing the father doing that for the mother, they need to experience the father doing that for them when they're taking care of the kids, if they're balancing the whole thing. So we don't know our power, which is this ability to maintain grounded, stable, thoughtful, considerateness, and not being angry. You see, women are more like waves. They're going to have all kinds of emotional issues, and that's the child learns, okay, with emotional issues, always on the other side of negative emotions is positive emotions. So don't panic, don't freak out. Your mom's upset about something, she's totally loving right afterwards. That's dad needs to be that more detached, unconditional, loving presence. And unfortunately, all the old-fashioned parenting things is you try to manipulate your children through intimidation. So dad has to be angry in order to get children to change. And that's old-fashioned, and really, it's out of date. It's out of date. It doesn't build safety and trust.
Now, something I've asked you before, but I ask everyone on this podcast is 2 questions at the end. What is one tip for more energy and vitality that you would give? And the second one is, what is one book that you would recommend? So, the energy and vitality thing, I can't remember what you said before, but you've already covered so much in terms of energy. What is one thing that gives you a lot of vitality at the moment?
Oh, always for me, meditation. Oh, well, I'll go beyond that. Okay, I'm really kind of like a Superman. I don't feel jet lag. I only eat 1 meal a day.
Do you?
Yeah, I don't. I'm just like all energy, and a big part of that is the way my wife and I have sex. Is I never ejaculate. You orgasm without ejaculation. This is the new science. I'm finally going to write books on it. My wife didn't want me to talk about it because it was too personal, but she's gone now. I have permission to talk about it. And the best to keep the passion alive in a marriage, you've got to have great sex. And what happens? Every man will lose his energy after sex if he ejaculates. We haven't been trained how to have orgasms without ejaculating. I can have sex for hours. Orgasm. It's spectacular.
I love the way you're turning a few heads in the reception of the Blakemore Hotel right now. It's great. Everyone's like, okay, no, I'm interested.
So the guys listening, there's a lot of people that teach this. My book on it hasn't come out yet. I've got my own system for it, but think of it from the point of view of psychology. If ejaculating, and we know this, causes men to go to sleep, your energy levels drop. You disconnect, and the reason you disconnect is you've just had a surge of estrogen. That's what orgasm is. It's estrogen. You feel all this love. This is fantastic. You want to go on forever, and it stops. So it's done. You're finished. You disconnect. Why do you disconnect? Because only through disconnecting can you rebuild the testosterone and bring the estrogen back down into balance. So that's what the body's doing. So men will pull away after ejaculating. That produces a conditioned response in the woman, which is, I just opened my heart to this guy and had a real orgasm, which is total surrender, opening the heart, estrogen hitting a peak. So she opens her heart and he leaves. After a while, you open your heart and somebody leaves every time, you're not going to open your heart anymore. It's biological function. And for men, the loss of testosterone will be associated with that woman. After a while, you look at her and you feel like taking a nap. Because that's called conditioned response, Pavlovian response.
Yeah, it's anchoring, isn't it?
It's an anchor. It's a more modern term. But people know the thing about the first study of psychology that really made it. A dog eating food salivates. Ring a bell every time he eats the food. And then no food, ring a bell, and it will automatically salivate. The salivation is the unconscious mind has been programmed. Sex is all about the unconscious mind. You can't control it. Your unconscious mind controls it. So you have this conditioned response of losing your energy. Your body just gets tired around your partner. So if you don't have that, but you learn how to overcome this addiction to ejaculation, which is the ultimate of all addictions, when you overcome that, because you get such a reward of hours of orgasmic sex, then what happens is you look at your
come
partner.
Back for more for a start, don't you?
That's exactly it. You can be ready at any
purely
time.
Physical
That's
level,
right.
you're like, well, I'm keen for it.
You know, I'm 67, and all my friends my age are so pissed off at me when I talk about this, because a lot of guys, nothing happens anymore.
Yeah.
You know, unless this is a paradox, but easily understood, unless it's porn. See, porn has no estrogen associated with it. It has newness associated. You don't know that woman, you don't care about that woman. Therefore, if you don't care about her, there's no estrogen, your testosterone can rise. Because estrogen lowers testosterone.
Well, I would recommend I gave up porn.
It's such a good thing.
Tell you what, it's amazing.
It makes such a difference. And there's kids, there's young guys who are 21 who are impotent with a real woman. They're dependent on porn. And it's because it literally is like an addiction. So you have to just give it up. You have to not look at it. And then you have to practice. You know, these guys are wanging all the time. So basically you practice slowly wanging. Or you can do fast. Just don't ejaculate. You stop. You see it coming, don't. And you do that for 3 months, your body will let go of the tendency that I have to ejaculate every time. And the arousal stage will start becoming orgasmic. That's a short teaching.
Well, now you've got the residents of the Blakemore Hotel really interested. And then what about one book that's had an influence on you, or one book you're reading at the moment, or a fiction book? It can be anything, really.
Well, I'm recommending these books on orgasm without ejaculation. They're all out there, and also for women. See, I just talked about the male side of it. Women don't have orgasms. There's training that women go through that have orgasms, and some women who do have an orgasm are done with one because of the way they get to the orgasm. So women have to learn to become orgasmic if they want more energy and happiness and estrogen. I mean, let's come back to that. So this is like a whole new level of information for people in our lives to create what the goal of every couple that comes to me almost is, besides we want harmony and whatever, we want lasting passion. We're losing the passion. And the younger generation today often can't get married even because they feel it's not going to last. It goes away so fast. It goes away because, again, newness will stimulate passion. How you have sex, the way I just mentioned, will sustain passion. But also what's important for passion is maintaining the gender polarity. The gender polarity, opposites attract. And when you become too much the same, there's nowhere to go. There's no connection. So you got to go in and out, in and out. That's what sex is.
And perhaps the last question would be, and I did mean to ask you about this, we've spoken about gender polarity before.
Yes.
How does that tie in with gender politics and kind of revised thinking about gender that's happened over the last year or two? How do you see the theories around gender polarity with new thinking about more fluid gender roles that's taking place now?
I like it, as long as we can maintain the balance within ourselves so that we're able, it's freedom. See, some guys were born to just have wider shoulders and more testosterone, so give them a construction job, give them a job at an army job, whatever, something that requires a lot of danger or something, and they're going to thrive in that. But other guys aren't born that way, so they're not going to thrive in that macho male sort of role. So we have the freedom now to be in more and more, the freedom to be in different roles. And some women, they would read Men Are From Mars and go, but I feel like I'm from Mars, okay? So they're more their masculine side is developed, or their female side has been damaged and suppressed. Okay, that's also can be the case. If you don't feel safe to be feminine, you'll go to the masculine to protect yourself.
Right.
So some women are there because they're naturally there. Some women are there because they've been wounded and they're feminine. Because we grow up in a culture that wounds the feminine. Okay, it really it's mistreated the feminine.
Yeah.
So it's not safe if you want to be free to be yourself, to be feminine.
Yeah.
But eventually you become too masculine. So it's all about finding the balance there, learning how to find that balance.
Jos, great to see you. Thank you so much for your raw honesty today and talking about everything going on in your life. I really appreciate it. Well, I hope to catch up again fairly soon. Just before we finish, where can people find out where to buy lithium orotate if they're not in this country, and all your books and everything else?
Well, if they're in America, you can, or you have a friend in America, they can mail it to you. You can go on the MarsVenus.com. We have it, but I have a brand that has all of the minerals, and I take that. And lithium orotate, but almost it's all over the internet, and lithium orotate, and it's cheap. And all you do is take a little pill a day, and you won't notice a change. You'll just notice that you're no longer as stressed as you were before.
Wonderful.
It's the other thing
that is terrific.
Yeah, it's just your brain, that looping thing, gone. And unless you're just like living in a closet and you have no friends, what it does allows your brain to be stimulated properly by good actions. See, it's not like these are drugs that give you an altered state. They provide the nutrition that supports positive choices in your life. You got to have love. Love is the answer.
So MarsVenus.com is the site. John, it's great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you to John. Thank you for listening to this podcast and for supporting it over the last few years. Sorry if the 3 Zesty Things newsletter hasn't been going out recently, but you know by now I've got a good excuse. If you want to read my article, Babies and Biohacking, natural, organic, non-EMF solutions, basically just the stuff that all the research that I was doing anyway for our baby, I've put it into a blog post. And if it helps, you're very welcome to take a look at it and click on some of the links that I put in it. That's Babies and Biohacking, and it's on TonyWrighton.com. And that is it. See you next week.